Hi everyone, welcome to RevOps Bites. Today I've got Heather Nannery with me. She's kindly joining us from New York, and we're going to be talking about all things RevOps. Heather, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Kathryn.
Just so everybody knows who I'm talking to, would love to just hear a little bit about yourself, a quick introduction.
I'm Heather Nannery. I'm the Director of Revenue Operations at a company called Cadmium. We're an event tech and learning management platform. I've spent most of my career on the go-to-market side, but I've done a lot of different types of ops. And I'm a New Yorker, so I was born and raised in the Bronx. I am a huge New York Ranger fan, and I'm kind of a geek outside of work, so it kind of all works together.
Thank you. I love to start these conversations off with talking about how people got into RevOps because we all come from so many different backgrounds. I think most of us kind of got into things accidentally, and it's always an interesting story. So, how did you end up getting into RevOps?
That's exactly how I got into RevOps. I actually started my career in nonprofit. I was a communications manager and I was part of a development team, and we were doing all kinds of crazy things. If anyone knows what Razor's Edge is, that was our CRM, and it was very Windows 1995, which is a whole vibe. We were doing a lot of mailers, things like that. And then I kind of got burnt out from the nonprofit space, wanted something a little bit more fast paced, faster moving, and I moved into tech. I took a first job as an operations manager, doing some office management, finance management, some grant writing for the NIH, moved into another role that was a finance operations role at a company called Catch a Fire. And really that was the springboard into RevOps for me. There was a need at the company at the time for someone to take on different parts of go-to-market operations. So I started in procurement and was closing deals with some of the first sellers and doing a lot of that work. And then I moved on to managing a sales development team, how we research and think about prospects and leads and do outreach. And slowly but surely, I had taken on more and more and established the first RevOps function there, and eventually moved into sales, both selling myself, running a sales team, managing renewals, and overseeing all of revenue at some point. And I feel really lucky because, I fell into RevOps, but I also fell into other parts of go to market and revenue, and was able to always learn new skills, have new experiences, find different gaps in the business to fill. And as you're scaling a company in that lens, you just have the opportunity to learn and fail. And it was really informative for me in terms of what I like and how I can contribute to an organization that's growing. So I feel grateful that I was trusted to continue filling in the gaps and learning new things. And I got to work with some really amazing people. And at the beginning of my career, I kind of thought that being a Jill of all trades was negative, something that, Jill of all trades, master of none. But I've realized that revenue operations is a really nice spot to be in because there are so many teams we get to collaborate with, so many teams that we get to understand how they think and what they need. And I think my experiences traversing ops has made me work better with finance, work better with product, work better with sellers, because if I've not sat in their shoes directly, I can kind of understand their roles a little bit better and what they need and what they care about and how I can enable them. So I feel really fortunate in my career that I've been able to both build that empathy and build my skills alongside it.
Yeah. I was going to say that I'm sure that's really impacted your philosophy for how you approach RevOps today, like being able to see through the eyes of all of these different roles that we work with and that we help in RevOps. Obviously, it's not always possible in our careers to get exposure to every single role, but definitely when we do have an opportunity to work with different roles or manage teams, even build out functions, then I think it can be a huge boon. What are some of the ways that those experiences have helped shape the way that you approach the role today?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I can say off the bat I have just extreme respect for is having RevOps be a place where cross-functional collaboration can live. And we have a lot of both conversations and discussions with our counterparts across the business. And so whenever I enter a new role or feel like I want to learn something, I actually will do a tour of teams and sit down and ask folks. I have a rubric of questions that I ask them, what are you focused on in your role? What does success look like for you? What are some of the biggest pain points you have? And I think I always put this in the backdrop of RevOps can help facilitate handoffs between teams better. We can build technology to make your work smoother. We have a pretty large mandate, I think, in terms of helping businesses have the systems, processes, and strategy in place to thrive. And so I always share with folks that I want you to be part of how RevOps thinks about their roadmap. And I think it's really important to spend time with everyone to build that together. And so I feel like my experiences across my career of having sat in so many different seats has just made me have a lot more empathy and a lot more openness to spending time with folks across the business to hear them out and have that inform some of what we do and some of how we approach problem solving. And one of my personal philosophies that I share whenever I join or build a RevOps team is we're one team, whether you're sitting on engineering, product, sales, we're all responsible for each other and the customer journey. And then second, I think, RevOps is our customers are the business. Our customers are the people in marketing, the people in sales. And so really, really respecting that as our customer and our end user should drive every sort of thing we build and SLA we put in place and training we think about. Making it geared towards the folks that are going to use the systems, I think, is a really critical part of being a RevOps leader.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I totally agree. I feel like it can be easy in the teams that RevOps supports to think purely about that role that you're in, that team that you're in, as opposed to being part of a wider whole. But everything does fit together. Everything does impact other teams, other individuals, other customers. And so RevOps really plays a critical role in tying everything together in a way that works or doesn't work in some cases. What you were saying about a few minutes ago about people in RevOps needing to do so many different things and focus on so many different areas, and that being something that you like about the role, made me think about the flip side. Not to get too negative or anything, but I feel from some conversations I've had that for a lot of RevOps leaders, there's this pressure to be able to do everything and be an expert on everything, to be strategic and technical and be able to execute as well and do it all, which is a really, really tall order. So I wonder, what has your experience been like managing all of those pressures? Yeah. How do you set boundaries and expectations that are realistic with both leadership and the people that you support?
Man, it's hard. And I think even in talking about my career journey, when discussing how I grew to just take on more and more and more, and then I eventually burnt out as a result of it, that was one manifestation of what I called the Heather can fix that problem. So we'll just give her more and more and see what happens. And so I have fallen into that trap. And I learned a lot from having that experience. And in, my mind now and how I operate, I think there's a couple things I do to help myself not fall into that trap where, I'm in RevOps and we lay off the entire marketing team and suddenly RevOps does marketing, which is not a skill I have. I have a lot of respect for marketing leaders because there is real expertise that you need to sit in that role that I don't have. So the things that I do now a little differently based on that are one with your manager who sometimes a CEO if you're in a small enough company, setting up the parameters and fundamental understanding of what RevOps is. And this is going to vary depending on org size, team size. So if you're a RevOps team of one, there's only so many things you can do because you are one person and there's only so much you can own. There's only so much expertise you have within that organization. If you have a RevOps team, I think one of the things that I like to set out at the beginning of forming that team is here's where RevOps is. Here's our mandate, here's our roles and responsibilities, here's our roadmap, so that we have some built-in expectation setting that we're doing across, above us leadership and then alongside us. And having that transparency, I find to be really helpful. And, here are the regular rhythm things we do. That's not just the projects we're building or the roadmap we have, but here's our responsibilities. We're responsible for system management. Maybe it's compensation and quota setting, strategy and alignment, enablement, and having those pillars very well defined so that it's not just the bloat that happens beyond that. So that's one way that I've found is really helpful, is just setting that up to begin with. The second thing is revisiting it. As you feel like more and more things are getting added, having conversations with folks that are really clear, like, I'm now involved in X new area and it's taking away from this Y set of responsibilities, and having that sense of self-awareness to be able to say, I can't do it all, but maybe there are things my team can do, or maybe there are things that I need to give up in order to do this. And these are trades we can make if they're super strategic. Maybe I give up building this X report so that I can do my work. And that's, I think, a really important thing to do. And then the last set of things that I think is real is something I've struggled with in my career is I'm really good at doing the strategy and I have enough skills to do the tactical work. And so I find myself sometimes cycling through what I call the brain drain of, I'm going to go in and fix the CRM and do some deduping and data cleaning. And I'm going to think about what the data structure should be and how I want to implement it. But then I will also be doing high level planning work alongside that. And it's actually really hard, I think, to shift up and down. And you get burnt out when you're doing that and not setting up the right work boundaries, work rhythms for yourself. And so I just think being really on top of what you need to do, being really on top of setting expectations, and just being really honest with yourself. There was a point in time where my marketing operations background was just really limited and I didn't know a ton because I hadn't done it and I hadn't been in a business that had a mature marketing function. So it's something I had to learn over time. And when I took on a role, I was just really honest about that. I was like, here's where I'm really, really strong. Here's where I'm not strong, but I have appetite to learn. And I think being really honest with yourself about your skills, being really honest with others, I found it has given me the opportunity to grow, to learn more, and to continue to flex my skills. And I see folks on LinkedIn that are AI RevOps gurus, and I'm like, I want to be like that person. I'm not like that person yet, but I want to be like that person. I think thinking about your skills that you want to accumulate over time and just having that conversation with yourself is also really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it made me think a big piece of that is knowing yourself and being able to advocate for yourself. Yeah. Right. And I have this feeling that maybe because RevOps is kind of it's a function that likes to help people. I think that a lot of people in RevOps, maybe they didn't get into it originally, but they stayed in it and they became passionate about it because you're helping other people. But because of that, they want to always be helpful. They don't want to say no. They don't necessarily want to push back. And so saying, this isn't my strength, or I'm not sure that I can do all of this, I think can be hard. I'm curious, first of all, do you agree with that, or do you think I'm totally off base? And if so, do you have any advice for people who are struggling with something like that and kind of trying to develop their advocacy, self-advocacy, and boundary setting skills?
I agree with that. And I think I've been there before.
Yeah.
And sometimes it happens to me even now when I feel like I know better, or I've learned how to maneuver through situations. I think because of what we were talking about around RevOps having a lot of breadth and also being the helpers or the fire putter outers, something I hear a lot in the space is about people that come into RevOps roles and then suddenly all they're doing is putting out fires for other people. They're on calls with sellers, helping them build a sequence. They're doing all these things. They're very busy, but they're not able to focus on the big tranches of work. And I see that happening all the time. And it's certainly happened to me. And I think in those situations, a couple things that I've found helpful is one, just giving yourself grace, because often if that's a situation that you're in, some of it is we have this personality, we want to help. And so we naturally find ourselves in these situations. But other parts of it could be that there's not strong leadership in the organization to build a roadmap, create the space, and see the fires that you're putting out and come up with a systematized way to put out those fires that frees up bandwidth. So I think especially new folks in the space, it's really easy if you don't have someone coaching you, guiding you, helping you create that space, I think, to fall into that tactical trap. And it's really hard to break out of once you're in it because you just never feel like you have enough time. And I think something that's helped me when I've had those moments, because I feel it when I get it really overwhelmed and I'm like, this isn't working for me. I take a step back. I'll clear out a day in my calendar. I'll be like, okay, here are all the things I was working on. I'll start listing it out. And then I'll reach out to folks. Like, I feel like I'm pretty good at, I call it the great gut check of reaching out to maybe other RevOps leaders that I know that have done similar things. And I'll be like, hey, here's like all the things I've been doing. What am I missing here? Like, help me like think outside of this box that I'm in right now, because I can't do it myself. And so I think it's okay to like have moments of overwhelm where you're struggling to think outside of what it is. Like, give yourself grace, set up the time and space to think about it, and then reach out to your network. Folks are in this community, I find, so down to help, so want to like also get in the weeds with you of like how they can make it better, and are really open to giving advice. I think at any layer of leadership, that's just something that's going to be valuable to you in your career. And there is no shame in reaching out, right? Like, I reach out all the time to friends and colleagues, and I'll even do it with some sellers. I'll be like, hey, I'm really stuck on this thing. Like, what do you think about it? And sometimes that just unlocks something for you that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. But if you're in this situation and unable to get out of it, I think having a conversation with your leadership about resourcing, maybe there's more resources that's needed. Maybe RevOps needs to change. Maybe your role needs to shift in some way. And having those conversations, I think, can be really helpful in climbing out of that, like, fire, I'm putting out the fires, like, sort of position that you find yourself in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm in complete agreement about the RevOps community being super friendly, really helpful. I think it probably does tie into the
wanting to help.
Exactly, wanting to help, like I was mentioning before. I've also done the same thing so many times, is reaching out to people for, sometimes you just need a second pair of eyes on something, and suddenly something clicks for you. You can get tunnel vision if it's just you looking at the same problem day in and day out.
100%.
Somebody comes in and they spend 5 minutes on it and they go, hey, have you thought about this? Or did you notice that? And you're like, duh, yeah, thanks.
Yep. Yeah, it's great because you're like, wow, I should have called this person maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I remember last time we were chatting, you mentioned to me that you had taken, I think, a year off at some point from your career to focus on life outside of work, before coming back into RevOps. I think that's amazing. And I'm really interested to hear more about how that's maybe shaped your perspective on leadership and work since then. Yeah.
I feel really privileged, actually, that I was able to do that. I know it's not accessible to everyone. And there were definitely parts of my life where it wouldn't have been accessible to me either. I have a really supportive family. My husband's amazing. He's like one of the best people I know. He's like the mirror to me. Like, I'm high energy and like a little aggressive, and he's like, we're going to chill out and everything's going to be fine. So I have that balance and I'm super grateful for it. But I alluded to this a little bit earlier, that I took on more and more and more, and suddenly found myself in this place where I was so burnt out and experiencing this like slew of health problems as a result of it. I was working crazy hours. I wasn't resting on the weekends. Some weekends I was working. I wasn't working out. I wasn't like doing the things I needed to do for myself because I felt like I had to keep going. Mm-hmm. I had these migraines, which like they're the worst to begin with, but I was having stroke symptoms. Like, I had numbness on my face, my hands, and something like that. Just like, and I was also like, at the time, I couldn't like move my head. The tension was so bad in my upper body that I couldn't move. And I had this moment where I was like, I can keep going, or I can just like take this as a sign that something's not working and really reevaluate. And so that led me to taking a year off, sort of putting my career on the back burner and doing a lot of work on myself, mentally, physically, to both like dig into why this happened, but then like develop the tools so that it doesn't happen again, and that I can like come back to work and be healthy, whole, and find joy in work again, because work had started to feel like a thing I had to do, not a thing I wanted to do. And I am the type of person, if you've worked with me before, I'm a clown. I like to joke around. I think like you should have fun at work. I think I tell all these kinds of bad metaphors, and that's how it should be. We're human beings. Like we get to work these jobs, but we should also have lives outside of work. And so this year, that year off that I took, really it did a lot for me. But I'd say the first thing is my health and wellness is now non-negotiable. I have nothing else if I don't have that. And so I have like a bedtime routine now, and I have hobbies outside of work that I've cultivated so that work isn't my whole life anymore. And I've realized that driving yourself to the point of burnout and taking on more and more is both not fulfilling, but means that I can't give myself to work in the way that I want to. Like, you're getting the stressed out, overwhelmed version of me, not the version of me that's like, how do we problem solve this? How do we fix this? What's the long-term way that we're going to work together to enable the business to grow? At the time, I thought that I was like, pushing through it in a way that was like really positive. But looking back, I'm like, people got like 10% of me, not 100% of me. And being able to have a really healthy, stable life outside of work, and life outside of work, where like I do pottery now, I read a lot, I see my friends more. Like, I was MIA from my friends for like a year at this time. I cook, I do all these things that I'm in my community with my neighbors. And so now I do all these things that bring me like fulfillment, and they actually help me in work because I'm able to give myself more to all of those things. And so, yeah, I feel like in terms of like leadership and how I bring this back to work, I think my teams should take care of themselves first and foremost. They should create that space, create a rhythm that works for them. Two, I try to cultivate an environment where people can do that. And I also like to check in with folks, give folks the benefit of the doubt, and create space where it's needed. I'm more human in work now. And like, people will say that I can be pretty like deadpan and like analytical, and I get like really excited to ask a lot of questions. That can be intimidating, but like, that's who I am. And I'm able to like bring that into work every day in a way that's like much more fulfilling now that I've taken a year off. And it was hard earned. Very hard earned, and like, I'm really proud of myself. And anyone that feels like they're in that spot that may be listening to this, if you ever want to chat about it, I'm here, because I think that it is the hardest step, being like, I actually need to step away from this. Like, saying no and walking away was the hardest thing I did. I think I cried for like 2 days. And then I was finally like, okay, I need to just let it go and focus on me for a little bit. And it was amazing. That was a little long-winded, but yeah.
It was, I was on the edge of my seat.
Thanks.
First of all, I should definitely feel super proud of yourself. I think it can be really hard just to choose to prioritize ourselves. I think in some circumstances it can even feel selfish, but it is important to make sure we're taking care of ourselves. I mean, it's so trite. I feel like I shouldn't even say it, but it's like when you go on an airplane. I just got back from holiday, so I'm thinking about how you have to put on the little safety mask before you help other people. It makes me think of that. But at the same time, like you very correctly mentioned at the beginning, not everybody is able to take time off, unfortunately. And I think that in some environments, it can be very difficult to take care of oneself outside of work, because there isn't that culture like the one that you are trying to bring into your current role, where people do have a life outside of work. There are many organizations out there that take a different philosophy, let's say. I wonder whether you have any thoughts on how somebody who might find themselves in a situation like that, who does feel like they're struggling, but doesn't have the opportunity to take time off and doesn't necessarily have a supportive culture, like what are some things that maybe they can do from your experience to at least make a small difference until they're maybe able to switch to a different role or something else?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And to the point of being like super privileged, I think sometimes it's also hard to access those resources that you need. For me, therapy has been a godsend, something that I am really grateful I started a few years ago. It's made a huge difference for me, but it's really hard to find affordable resources for therapy and resources like that. It's something that you have to look for, you have to be savvy, and because you have to look for it and you have to put effort in, it's even harder when you're overwhelmed and potentially depressed and anxious to go and do those things. I think one of the ways that like I would recommend, if that feels really daunting, reach out to a friend and tell them, I really want to access therapy resources. I really want to work on my anxiety. I really want to work on boundaries. Can you help me like find a resource to do that? And 9 times out of 10, your friend will be like, yeah, sure. Let's go and like see what the list is of like affordable or free resources out there that maybe you can get on your health insurance, depending on what that looks like. This is a very America centric. I know it's not the case outside of America. It's different way of accessing resources. Sometimes just sending that one message of like, I need help. Here's what I'm thinking. Can you help me? That could like take the barrier down that exists there. If you do have the appetite, there are a lot of free therapy resources out there. It sometimes takes time to find someone that's going to work for you, but it's worth the effort if you can find a safe place, someone to talk to, someone to work through, someone that's objective outside of your work environment that can give you a little bit of perspective. I find that's really helpful. The last couple of things that I've done for myself when I'm in periods of stress and anxiety and I'm working, which happened, like as soon as I got back to work, like my anxiety like increased and I found myself like not sleeping as well, falling back into some like old patterns of my like trigger when I know that things are feeling a little uncertain as I think, oh, I can't do this job. Like I don't have what it takes. Who thought that they could put me in this role and I would be okay? Like the sort of
voice,
yeah, the little evil person in your head that's saying all these things and you believe them. Whenever I find that start to like surge for me, that is when I go back to like my tactics of I turn my computer off at a particular time and I go on a walk. I get outside. I make sure I eat breakfast within 30 minutes of getting up, because for women, cortisol levels spikes first thing in the morning and it helps create less stress for me. And so what are like the rhythms and routines that you can have in your day that make you feel whole and give you that space? Sometimes if I'm feeling like particularly stressed, I'll lie down for 20 minutes or I'll look outside my window for 5 minutes and like look at my backyard and the trees. And like, I know that, you know, the current saying of like going outside to touch grass, like that's a real thing. Go outside and touch some grass. Harder in the city, like maybe don't touch, like if you're in New York City, don't touch grass outside like on Fifth Avenue, like maybe go to Central Park or a park and touch some grass, but like finding things that work for you and bring you peace. Because I was, you know, at my worst, I was like back-to-back meetings. I had 30-minute meeting, 30-minute meeting, 30-minute meeting, and like never had time for myself. Now I schedule lunch so that I can eat in the middle of the day, because like if I don't eat, I'm a terrible, miserable person to be around. And so if you can't leave the role and the role is, you know, giving you, you're having these like issues because of the role, or how can you create space within yourself so that you're more than just the role and you have these pockets of peace within your day so that you're not running yourself ragged, and set those boundaries and do it for yourself. Because at the end of the day, the job can leave you, they can fire you at any given moment, but you need to live with yourself. And I think that should be your number one priority.
Amen. And yeah, before we started recording, we were talking about things that one can learn from cat's behavior. And I feel like the taking a few minutes to look out of the window and the taking a few minutes to lie down and take a nap would definitely fall within that category.
Yes. One of my friends calls, if she's having a particularly stressful day, she'll like get down and like lie on the floor. She calls it floor time. And she's like, I just get on the floor and I look up at the ceiling and like suddenly I feel relaxed. So floor times for you, that's also very cat behavior, but it can reset your whole day.
Yep. And whether you're working from home or in an office, you can always start a new trend. And this is probably going to sound ridiculous, but in one of my old roles, we used to, it was like 10 o'clock every morning or something, we would all go into a room and do push-ups. And we would see how many push-ups we could do, which is probably not everybody's cup of tea. But I have to say, like after the push-up time each morning, we all went back to our desks like, oh yeah, actually feel really good, like let out some stress, feel a bit energetic. So you never know, you could start a trend in your office.
I like that. Push up time.
Changing topic slightly. I know that you're fairly new in a new role. Congratulations,
Thank
first
you.
off. That being the case, I'm wondering, do you have a playbook for when you enter a new role, like the first 90 days, people you talk to, things that you analyze, things that you look at? And if so, what does that look like? Because I
I
think that's
do.
a lot of people, think about, particularly if they're like taking on their first RevOps role or a first leadership role or something like that. They're wondering, like, what should I focus on to really make an impact?
Yeah, I do actually. And something I'm really proud of. When I returned back to work after my time off, I actually worked with a career coach. And I was talking to her about like, I had all these anxieties about onboarding again. And what if I had lost my skills in the year off that I had? I had these like the little voice was strong. And two things that her and I did, which were really helpful. One, I read the first 90 days, which is a great resource. It has really good tips on like how to approach a new role, what types of things to ask as you're like making your way around the company that I found really valuable. The second was I have this 90-day rubric now that I use. That's like it's basically like what are my goals? What do I want to learn? And then what are my personal goals? So as I joined Cadmium, I filled that out again. I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to spend my first 30 days on learning. And I think about that in a couple of different components. Then my next 30 days, which I'm entering tomorrow, is going to be on how do we build out the roadmap? How do I bring people along? What are the quick wins, long-term wins, things we want to focus on? And then 90 days, it's how do you deploy that? How do you work cross-functionally? What does that look like? And so within that structure, there's a few key pillars that I like to do a state of the union on in the first 30 days. Systems is the first one. What is our tech map? Are systems integrated? Are they not integrated? What's the CRM situation? And that's often a whole situation. The second is people. What's the structure of the revenue organization? Are there any key components that feel like they're missing? Do the roles make sense for the way we are? I'm starting to create a list of who you want to meet. And I'll start with marketing, sales, accounts. If there's a customer success team, who on product and finance are going to be my stakeholders, and mapping out meeting those people across the first 4 weeks to do both intros and ask them questions about their role and pain points. The third pillar is revenue strategy. So what's our product? How do we price it? What's our TAM? What's the pain that we solve? Getting a really solid understanding of that. Under that is process. Do we have process in place? Are folks following it if there is a process in place? How do we track a signal to close? Like, what's the model that we're using? How are teams working together? Are handoffs effective? Then I think about reporting and analysis. How are things converting? Is the data structure clear? Do we have gaps that need to be filled? And then finally, enablement. When you look at all of those structures, are the teams trained well? Do meeting structures drive accountability? And I like to get a state of the union of all of those pillars so that I know where we're starting from. And I think also doing a state of the union and then shopping it with folks across the org, getting their take on, like I'll go to marketing and be like, hey, this is what I see. What do you see? What's different from your perspective? Is there anything I missed? It just helps me also like fill in more gaps because you can't learn everything in the first 30 days. It's especially in larger orgs, it's just not feasible. And then based on that first state of the union, we'll start to build our roadmap, our short-term wins, our long-term wins. I have a bias for, what is going to help us generate the outcomes we need. So if I'm entering an organization and I feel like we don't have enough pipeline, then that'll be where I'll focus my time, even if I'm hearing the CPQ process is a mess. That may not be the most important thing if we're not closing enough business to begin with. And so just having an orientation for what can I do to influence the business? Do we have fundamentals in place? And using that as a prioritization scale and exercise, I think is just really helpful. And so that's how I think about it. I also have all of this mapped out. So perhaps as like a follow-up, I can share some resources with folks of what this 90-day plan looks like, what the pillars look like, and how I see it. And I just feel really lucky because, I'm 30 days in at Cadmium and everyone has been both really welcoming, super excited that I'm here. And I see just a lot of opportunity to help the folks that have been in the business for a long time move their work forward, perhaps be more efficient. And I just think that's thrilling. Whenever I can play detective and then be like, here's what we're going to do, you kind of you feel like that's a win to begin with. So yeah, I feel really lucky to be in this place right now.
I am delighted to hear that for you.
Thank you.
And I hope that the next 30 days and the 30 days after that are equally productive. And I think that everybody on the team is lucky to have you there.
Thank you so much.
I think, sadly, that we're about coming up on time. So, Heather, I just want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate how candid you were and all of the topics that you were willing to discuss. It's something that everything that you've spoken about are things that I can relate to. I'm sure that many of us in the RevOps space can relate to that as well. So I think everything you said will be very valuable to people listening in. So yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and for folks that made it through, connect with me. I'm a resource available to you. I'm always happy to chat. I feel really lucky that I've had these experiences in my career, and I'm always willing to share and learn more. So just thank you again for having me.
Yeah. The feeling is mutual. And yeah, for anybody who would like to connect with Heather, I will pop her contact details somewhere into the video description. They'll be there.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.